when a conspiracy is real. What is the truth today? I'm in with the in crowd. So when a conspiracy theory turns out to be right, what do you do? I mean, do you remember the glorious days of March 2020 when we all thought this COVID lockdown would be 4 to 6 weeks tops? At about that time, we were told masks would not prevent COVID infections by Dr. Fauci, and that COVID came from a bat in a wet market in Wuhan, China. Anybody at that time who suggested that the virus came from an NIH-funded laboratory in China was openly ridiculed. They lost credibility and they were publicly denounced. And they were basically thrown out of the media club and lumped in with Alex Jones. Now, this is The Guardian in 2020. Quote, "There is no evidence to suggest that the coronavirus leaked from a Chinese research laboratory," intelligence sources have told The Guardian, contradicting recent White House claims that there's growing proof this is how the pandemic began. Or all the scientists that published an open letter in The Lancet. Quote, "We stand together to strongly condemn conspiracy theories suggesting COVID-19 does not have a natural origin. Scientists from multiple countries have published and analyzed genomes of the causative agent, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, and they overwhelmingly conclude that this coronavirus originated in wildlife." If you read my article on this, you will see 10 footnotes. The 10 citations to support their stance that COVID-19 came from nature. They must really know what they're talking about. Uh-oh, what a difference 2 years makes. We've got reports. Senate GOP report argues lab leak theory is most likely the origin of COVID. It's not just the American press. In Australia, bombshell study backs COVID lab leak theory. The COVID-19 virus that killed 6.5 million people and 1 million people in the United States may have escaped from a laboratory in Wuhan, China. My, how the world begins to turn. In a recent Vanity Fair ProPublica article, and you've got to read this article, it's an explosive combination of research, analysis, and reporting. It is COVID-19 origins, investigating a complex and grave situation inside a Wuhan lab. Again, I can't recommend this article enough. The article examined evidence to determine the origins of COVID-19. It does not definitively state the origin was a leak from a Chinese laboratory. The conclusion is that no one could really know, given the lack of cooperation by the Chinese government in looking into this matter. But there are considerable reasons to think it may have come from a lab in Wuhan, China. So I guess saying the pandemic could have originated from a Chinese laboratory is okay now? Feeding the conspiracy. So sometimes the conspiracy theory, if not proven, at least has merit enough for discussion. Now, this is not a newsletter of epidemiology. We eschew scientific investigations, mostly because we're not qualified. Instead, we seek to understand the sources of conspiracy theories and how they can get so many believers. The lab leak theory of COVID-19 origins is a perfect example of experts relying on their credibility, shutting down an idea. But that wasn't enough. Anyone who suggested that COVID-19 leaked from a Chinese lab was called racist and stupid. Conspiracies grow when people lose trust in their institutions. And they also grow when people are afraid and uncertain. Another example is when Dr. Fauci lied to the American public about masks, which we mentioned earlier. He later then admits he lied because he didn't want a shortage of masks for healthcare workers. And it was a reversal that only took 2 months. Like, we're not gonna remember? We cannot ignore the dishonesty of the people who were supposed to guide us when we had a president who is completely inept at dealing with this national emergency. We can and should demand better. The problem is the institutions have to acknowledge the truth first. They have to look squarely forward and say, I was wrong. I was wrong to say the lab leak theory was crazy. This is Christine Axsmith from The Tell with Christine Axsmith at christineaxsmith.substack.com. We write about conspiracies, cults, quacks, and just general propaganda and persuasion. It's kind of a wide net, but hey, I just do what I think is interesting.